my name is Healing Rainbow Woman, Nādui Nāguyabkwe, and I didn't receive that till later in life. But when I was born, I was a very sensitive and shy child, and I would see spirit quite a bit. At night, my ancestors would come. I was a dreamer. I would dream tons and tons. And that sensitivity led to me feeling like the world was too much. The world was too dense. I could feel everybody else's emotions. So it led to me being probably a little bit conserved or just like reserved and introverted and a little bit scared of the world, I think, at the
Yeah.
time. My own healing has guided my path forward. Seeing different practitioners or healers or therapists has been, that inner work has become my outer glow, or it has informed the path forward, which is why I so believe in reflecting inwards first and doing that inner work, because I think that that does guide our medicine in the world.
Asha Frost, welcome to Fear Unzipped. I've wanted you on for a very long time. I read your gorgeous book. We're going to talk all about this. We're going to talk about your new book. We're going to talk about your magical oracle cards, which I have stories to share with you. I'm just really delighted to have you here. And I'd like to share with the audience a little bit about you. You are Healing Rainbow Woman. You're Anishinaabe Indigenous medicine healer woman of the Star People. So beautiful. I see I'm getting tears in my eyes. Oh my gosh. You're an international best-selling author of You Are the Medicine, which is very near and dear to my heart, the Sacred Medicine Oracle and the Animal Elders Oracle. You train in psychology and homeopathic medicine. Your story is incredible, Asha. Just your healing story. And it's going to help so many people when they hear your story. You've guided thousands of people through profound and lasting transformation as a healer, a homeopath, and ceremonial guide. And you've become an international prominent speaker in the field of Indigenous healing. Okay, you are a space healer, a space holder, and a healer, but a space holder. Okay, the fact that I'm getting this emotional introducing you, this has not happened to me before. And I even have this thing where I have trouble crying because my tear ducts are clogged. So this is kind of magical. I just want you to know that this is happening. There's something about you, your story, the magic of what you put out into the world that's really, really resonating deeply with me. So I want you to know that. I am going to toss it to you, but just a second. This is the book. Everybody, please read this book. You Are the Medicine, and you are the medicine. And it's so important for us to understand that. The other thing is these oracle cards, it's sacred medicine. Oh, I always have a hard time with that. There's some magic in there because I did readings for just pulled a card for two of my friends on their separate birthdays. And I read what it said, and they both said, I'm buying this deck. I have to have this deck. This completely resonates. And that's not a usual response. I pull a card every day, and it's exactly what I needed. And I pulled one for this episode, but we'll get to that in a little bit because we have to hear you. So, Asha, now, would you be so kind to share with us your story, but your origin story, from the beginning to where you are now?
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you for sharing about the tears, because that means a lot to me. I really, really see tears as our sacred waters meeting each other. So I feel like it's our introduction to each other for us to share waters. So my name is Healing Rainbow Woman, Nādui Nāguyabkwe, and I didn't receive that till later in life. But when I was born, I was a very sensitive and shy child, and I would see spirit quite a bit. At night, my ancestors would come. I was a dreamer. I would dream tons and tons. And that sensitivity led to me feeling like the world was too much. The world was too dense. I could feel everybody else's emotions. So it led to me being probably a little bit conserved or just like reserved and introverted and a little bit scared of the world, I think, at the time. Yeah. And my mom was fairly protective. And so I dropped out of kindergarten and she let me kind of stay home that year because she saw that in me. So she was a very supportive mother in those ways and really saw me and really held those gifts as sacred. But because of what had happened in my lineage, I grew up in a home that was, I would say, spiritually based, of course, from the heart. We followed our seven grandfather teachings, but it wasn't overtly, you are an Indigenous person. This is how we are going to follow our ways of living and being, because all of that has been colonized and taken from our lineage. So when it wasn't until I got sick when I was 17, I was diagnosed with lupus. And that was an awakening, as it is for most people, some sort of illness or some sort of cracking open. And I went on a healing journey because I wanted to know how I could get well. I was really terrified at that time. There wasn't a lot to know about lupus. So the doctors said, these are your options. You have these medications and you're not going to have children and you might not live very long and all of these things. And I knew there was something else. And I remember our friend's mother at the time, she knew a naturopath. So she introduced me. And then the rest is sort of history because they introduced me to homeopathy, which spoke to my sensitive soul, spoke to that part of me that knew, that somehow knew on an intuitive level that energy was real. And so homeopathy is different than taking plants or supplements. It's energy medicine. And she had found this remedy for me at the time that was for my shy traits. Like she said, this is for your shyness as a child. And I thought, well, how is that going to help me? But it did. It helped a lot of my physical symptoms and it helped a lot of the anxiety around the health that I was having at the time. And that opened up this whole, it just unfolded this whole path of I had been doing a psychology degree at the time, but then I wanted to go to homeopathy school to be a homeopath. And everything since then has really unfolded in that way. You know, my own healing has guided my path forward. Seeing different practitioners or healers or therapists has been, you know, that inner work has become my outer glow, or it has informed the path forward, which is why I so believe in reflecting inwards first and doing that inner work, because I think that that does guide our medicine in the world. And so I was a homeopath, which evolved into doing more energy medicine, hands-on healing. I took some training in the energy arts and shamanic ways. And then, of course, my medicine started to really develop from my ancestors. And I think that was through my own healing work, I started to trust that I had these gifts and I would sit in front of people. And as you said, you know, they would cry in front of me just in in the space. And that's how I learned that was part of my medicine, and that it didn't have to be this grand gesture. I could sit there, hold this sacred space, call in our ancestors, and there would be a movement of emotion and healing happening simply from presence, simply from energy holding.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a private practice for 15 years. So that was really a joy. And of course, seeing all those people burnt me out because it was a lot of giving. So I had a second child at the nearing the end of that practice, and I realized I couldn't do that anymore because I was caring for two little boys. And that's when I moved things more online and globally. And yeah, here I am now. So I'm doing more speaking events, and that's my favorite thing to do.
It's so beautiful. You do hold space. I can feel it. You absolutely do hold space, which is a beautiful thing to do. And I often say to people, you can walk into a room and heal. You don't need to do grandiose gestures, or just if you have that energetic presence. And I also find it fascinating that this homeopathic person said to you, we're going to work on your shyness first. And you don't think, well, wait a minute, I have lupus. You know, no, but there's a connection to it all. Don't you agree?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I mean, that shyness was also representing the people pleaser, the perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
the one, the sensitive one who took in everything and took it in deeply.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a different elements that sometimes get displayed in people who have autoimmune conditions that that we can kind of see like, oh, there's something underlying here that we all share.
Yeah. So when you were speaking about yourself as a child, you were describing me, exactly describing me. Highly sensitive, feeling energies, not understanding, hearing adults say something, but feeling, no, that's not true. But they're the adults. So, of course, they're telling the truth. And what's wrong with me? And when you pick up on everybody's energies, it can be, I mean, I was the most anxious person ever all my life until I learned about neuroscience and how the brain works.
Mm.
then everything shifted for me. And that's when the metaphysical side came out huge, 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 because I calmed that left brain side down. And it's interesting. You carry with you a lot of trauma from your lineage. And in your case, it was colonization and residential schooling. You mentioned your husband is Jewish, so he carries the Holocaust. I'm Jewish also. And my mother-in-law was in concentration camps in Germany and was German. Um, so can you speak to that? Because not only are we carrying physical things, you had lupus, it was a physical thing, came out physically, but it has to be tied to the heavy load that you're carrying.
Yeah, I believe it is. I feel like I'm still working on that every single day. I wish it
Yes.
wasn't so heavy. I wish it wasn't so in there, you know? I feel like I've been doing years of healing and it's still, there's layers and layers of things that maybe are just unfolding as I experience them or as I witness them in my children and see them unfold in them. So I mean, there is science to prove that we carry this generational pain in our DNA and that it gets passed down. And I've seen that in my children and things that I have not resolved yet, that they express it. And then it obviously gives me the catalyst to start to look at those things. But my grandparents being in residential school, I think there was a certain rigidity and strictness, you know, that, I mean, they cut their hair, they
Mm.
abused them for speaking their language. They had all of these different things that I can see threaded through some of those aspects of the lupus, like of being intensely hard on myself, having this really intense, oppressive voice that I'm thinking, where does this come from? My mom was very kind to me. It doesn't make sense
Mhm.
logically. So I can dig down and think, oh, that's really swirling around in my DNA, and I've done journeying to find those things. But then how do you heal that completely? You know, and I've been doing a lot of different work to try to do that. So there's layers that have come off, but there's still lots there. And especially with my children, I think about that. I also think about the wisdom they carry from having their great grandfather was in the Holocaust too. And my youngest, I shared this in my book, you know, he's used the words, don't let them snatch me away when he was in kindergarten, which just came out of nowhere. And we thought, where does that come from? And there's really evidence that you know there's that separation that's deeply ingrained in their
Mhm.
DNA somehow. So yeah, it's something I think about every single day, and
Uh,
it is layered. There's a lot of lupus in my family, actually. My mother has lupus, my aunt has lupus, my sister has a skin type of lupus. So I
uh,
know there's definitely a really deep thread there.
and it's something that I often say on here that when we do this healing journey that we're all on, I think we're all a work in progress. I know that I am, I'll speak for myself, that it doesn't magically disappear. And so I had recently something that I thought I let go of 30 years ago, Asha. 30 years ago, gone, done. It popped in and I said, what the hell? Why is this coming in now? And then now what I do is I look at it, I go, that's really interesting. I don't judge it because the minute I start judging, I go down, the rabbit hole. I go, why is it coming in now? There must be something else that I have to clear. I mean, if you think about all the lifetimes that we've lived, if we believe in that, if people believe in that, you can even go with this one lifetime. It's an awful lot. But if you go through hundreds of lifetimes that you're carrying all that with you, and I do think about colonization and how horrific that was for a people, for a massive group of people, and it's happened to a lot of different people, for to control. And now I think we're all starting to see the power sources out there a bit. And I think light bulbs are going off for us. And so, what are things that you do to help you navigate that when that pops in? Because it's popping in for all of us every day. We're all a bit frightened right now.
Mm. Yeah, I think, I mean, this is a really personal, I guess, share, but I've been really dealing with intense chronic pain that's been fairly
Mhm.
excruciating for the past 2 years. And so it's been more daily reminders than it has been ever in my life. And As I haven't been given a break, which has been an interesting. Usually with lupus, I'd have a flare and then I'd get better and have a flare, and this has been constant, excruciating pain that is a constant reminder where it brings my attention right there, my presence is right there, and so I take that to different healers, or I take that to my own journaling and my own reflection and my own nervous system work, and think, why does this feel like a hot poker? Why is this burning pain there? Why can I not walk today? It's been a very direct experience of like, you have to deal with this now because there's no other choice. I don't have another choice to escape it. I guess there's no escape right now. And we're, as the world, I feel, because of course we're both sensitive, the collective
Mm-hmm.
uh, energy, that there's been so much since 2020. I've been, every time I share in a group, I'm like, we're in a lot, this is a lot. And it just seems like you're just constantly saying that. It's never really lifting up.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work to ask, like, how much of this am I carrying on my own shoulders that's not
Mm-hmm.
mine? How can I clear that? But it's a lot of work to do that all the time, because it's not always easy to discern, is this all mine that I'm carrying? But I try to bring it to the earth if I can, and just get it out of my body, or shake it, or breathe it, or journal it out, because I need to be aware of that, because I'm already carrying enough on my own. So
Oh,
the collective
you
energy doesn't need to be inside of me too.
it is we're all kind of dealing with that collective energy right now. And I mean, I have all the tool. I have every tool in the book. I know every tool from neuroscience to metaphysics to, and there are days I just put my head in my hands and I go, I can't do this right now. And I allow it. I mean, I think you have to allow it and you have to honor that. I also think self-love is unbelievably healing. And I think we beat ourselves up because, why is this happening to me again? And what's wrong? And every day, Asha, I tell myself I'm proud of myself. I actually am. Just doing this podcast, I'm unbelievably proud of myself that I said I was going to do it. My guides came to me. They told me what I was going to do. I said no. They said yes. And there were too many signs. And then I did it. And I offer that to everybody. If you have an idea and you actually do it, who cares how big it gets or who hears it? But you did it. You're doing it. You've written these beautiful books, these gorgeous oracle cards. Be proud. Be so proud of yourself.
Thank you. Yes, yes. It is a really good reminder, actually, because I do get caught up in that. What's next? Not necessarily celebrating, because it's friggin' hard to write a book. I just wrote another one, and I forgot how hard it is to write a book after doing two decks, which was a little lighter and fun. It's intense to write a book. And so I do need to take a pause and an integration to celebrate myself more, and to say I'm proud of myself, because it's a journey.
Oh, I'm so proud of you because it's all pretty challenging, but we know that being a human on this planet is we know it's a bit challenging, but we chose it. I believe we chose it. And I think it's an honor. I think it's an absolute honor to feel human emotions and then try to navigate through them and figure out what if you found working with clients are the things that you found are kind of universal that kind of stop people in their tracks, that they don't move forward because it's a fear or something stopping them.
There's so many things, but I do
Yeah.
feel like it's the same things, right? It's fear of persecution, like fear of being judged, fear of being criticized, which I think can be a real fear, because it does hurt, especially if you're a sensitive person, when you get feedback on social media or any of those places
Mm-hmm.
that feels, ouch, it feels like it's painful. So those fears, fear of not being good enough, fear of not having enough credentials behind your name. I feel like I hear that a lot. Fear of failing. So I think there's all of those things. I just wrote something for my newsletter today about making mistakes, and how, I've made a lot of mistakes over my life. And I think that building capacity to make mistakes is what stretches you, because I failed at things. And then of course I have my 2 days of pity party or
Of
crying.
course.
But those things really do build capacity, versus me not choosing to do them at all. I realize how much courage it takes to put yourself out there. I realize now how much courage. I was sharing the other day about how I speak on all these stages, and people are like, did you not know that this is like number one fear of people, public speaking? And I had kind of forgotten that because now it's become second nature to me, but it never was before. I used to be anxious about it nights before. So I think building those capacities really help. And I try to help when I'm mentoring people to remind them the people you're observing out there doing the thing, they failed so many times. They've made so many mistakes. And that's how they are where they're at because they've had the courage to just try and
Exactly.
and also show their humanity. Like I think that's such an important thing that we need to show our humanity because otherwise how are we going to be connected and remain connected if we somehow separate ourselves and show ourselves as somehow perfect or better than? We
Oh,
need to show that we're all human, and that's a really huge value of mine.
so authenticity is a huge value of mine. And I can't say I always was all my life. You know, I had a PR firm. I worked in Hollywood. You play the game. You don't know what you're doing, but you act like you know what you're doing. We all make it till we fake it. But when I did this podcast, I thought, okay, Sandi, you're going to be authentic and it's going to be scary.
Mm.
And you're going to put yourself out there as who you really are. And people are going to either like it or not like it. And it's okay. It doesn't matter because, as my guide said, people will find you who are going to resonate with you. And so I honor those who can do that and put themselves out there, not with the agenda for numbers or an agenda, but like what you're doing. And you have some physical issues that you're dealing with, but you're still well, you'd never know because you look stunningly beautiful and so healthy and you would never know that you're in pain ever. um, but because energetically, your energy is just magical. It's magnificent, which is I think what we all want is for our energy to be beautiful.
Mm.
It's the best compliment I can get. If somebody says either you're funny or you have beautiful energy, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Done. Mic drop.
Yes, I agree.
So when you're writing your books and when you're writing your oracle cards, are they channeled into you because there's something that is not on this earthly plane that's in them?
Yeah. I would say yes, definitely. I'd say especially the cards, the book as well, but the cards came from a different place. And they really came from the spirit of in the Sacred Medicine Oracle, there's like a strawberry, or they had
Mhm.
a being. So they had like an embodiment energy. So they came and they channeled their message, which was really beautiful. And then my animal spirit deck, same thing. The animals came in and channeled a message. So that felt very different. The book, I think, is a weaving of ancestral voices that live with my bones that wanted to come through. So I would say for the book, it was it was guiding me and directing me about what to write. And I'm praying because this, as my next book is going to come out, praying that it's going to reach the people that it's meant to reach, because that's always, you're not writing for everybody. It's not going to be for everybody. And this is a very vulnerable book. The first one was too, but this is in a different way. So I have to put a lot of trust into that it's going to reach the people, but it's definitely a co-creation. I think anything we create is ultimately a
Mhm.
co-creation with spirit, and creator, and our origin story, our creation story, why we're here. I believe that in that way. Our medicine guides us. And then as we put it out there, we have to let it go. We have to surrender it and let it land however it's going to land, which is the hardest part as a human being, I think.
Your new book is about resting.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that we do not give enough credence to. That rest is wait. If I'm resting, I'm not busy and I'm not doing and I'm not accomplishing. And I know from my own experience that if I don't rest, I'm worthless. So every day I lay on the floor. I just lay on the floor for 15 minutes, maybe longer, because I fall asleep. And it's so peaceful to me, Asha. It just calms my nerves. And can you share with us a bit about the importance of resting that you found in your own life, how important it is?
It's taken me a long time to get here. That's why I think we write and teach what we need to learn. And of course, like everyone else, I've been marinating in those systems of oppression that say you are not valuable, or you have to earn your rest, or, you're going to go obsolete, especially in these days with social media. You don't show up for 2 weeks and you think, oh, did everybody forget about me? It's really silly, but it's a real fear. So when I was diagnosed with lupus, I acted like I don't have lupus. I knew I did. I had all this pain. I had flare-ups, but I thought, well, I'll just live my life as though I'm just a normal person with normal capacities and energies. And plus, I was in the wellness world. And at that time, still to a little certain extent, but at that time, it was very much, you've created this with your thoughts. You've somehow affirmed this into your body. So I think I felt a lot of shame and carried that somehow I caused this. So I wasn't going to live like I needed any extra help or support. I was just going to live the normal way, so that nobody would say, well, your thoughts really created this in your body. And I lived that way for a very long time until I couldn't anymore. And I kept burning out over and over again in different iterations of my career. And I would end up in the hospital, end up flat on my back, and not able to be anything to anybody. So the last 2 years have been particularly hard. And that's what inspired this book, because I could live like that, for a long time and almost hiding it a little bit. And now my mobility is really impacted and I can't hide it any longer.
Yeah.
And it's impacting how I'm parenting. It's impacting all of these things. I'm getting a way more, I don't know, um, lived experience of how somebody is living with a disability in the world, living with lowered capacity in the world. So there's a different level of empathy and compassion, and rest has to be like, I took a nap before our call, which I never would have done before, because that was just, I'm not being productive. And I only have my kids, come home at 2:45. It's a very short day. So I always think, I only have these hours. There was like an inner hustler inside of me that I still have to work to quiet down and tell her, you're safe. It's safe to rest. And with like neuroscience and nervous system work, to find that rest and repair is essential. But in a traumatized body, or a colonized body, or a body with intergenerational trauma at the forefront, it's really hard to get there. So that's what the work's been over the last really 2 years, of reminding myself that it's safe to rest. And that's really what the book is about. So it really is, I'd say, tailored towards anybody who's lived in a body that hasn't been able to keep up, that has been forgotten and left behind. But I do think to a certain extent we've all lived in seasons of that, or have loved people in seasons of that. So I think that it's going to speak to those seasons that we've been in, which is why it's called the inner winter, because I consider myself living in a wintering body, but I ran from it for so long.
I think it's probably one of the most important things for our body is to rest, to rejuvenate. I remember many, many years ago, Ariana Huffington, who created Thrive, the network Thrive, she worked until she couldn't. She fell over at her desk and she realized how important sleep is. Because if you're getting 2 hours of sleep a night, it's just not working for you. I mean, some people can get away with that, but she is such a champion of rest. And especially, I think it applies also, Asha, to people who are on that wheel, going. I have all this content. I doing a podcast. You have social media. You have editing. You have a lot that people don't. That's behind the scenes. You don't see. It's true with anything out there. Writing a book. There's a time where you've got to take a break. So I do I very much honor that. And I'm looking forward to your book because it is such an important part of being human. We have stepped away from honoring our bodies and resting and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like not only are you carrying generational trauma with you, but are you carrying past life trauma with you?
I'm sure I am. Yeah. I just did a past life regression a couple of weeks ago, and it was beautiful. Like what I discovered about the pain I'm currently having, and there's that part of me, that human part of me that's like, oh, and now will it heal? Do I have some when's it going to go away? Because I did all this really intense work on the table and it's still here, but I got some insight and I do believe it's, that work is really important. So I do believe I'm an old soul and I've lived a lot of lifetimes. I feel that inside of my soul. And so, yes, I think there's a lot of past life, yeah,
Can I
memory.
tell you, you are definitely an old soul? I interviewed Ainsley McLeod yesterday, and he is a past life regressionist who talks about when we come in with different soul types.
Mm.
And he also, so this is so interesting. I was saying this on that podcast that in science, you come in with two fears, the fear of falling, the fear of loud noises. But in your soul, you're coming in fear of betrayal, fear of intimacy, fear of death, fear of whatever happened in all those lifetimes. And you carry that with you. That's the consciousness that's around you. And then we're picking up on all the consciousness out there that's bombarding, banging into each other of all these things that people are traumatized over. So it's a wonder that we get through. it is,
It really
it
is.
is a wonder. And he told me that, he can, certain things he feels he can remedy right away. But he says other things, they take a little bit longer, but they can be cleared. And we think we want it over immediately, but it can be cleared. I do love looking at that part because how else are you going to really heal yourself if you can't look back at how you've been sort of traumatized in past lives?
Yeah. Did you figure out what your biggest fear was in talking to
Well, I've had a huge fear of abandonment and isolation, and abandonment, isolation, and rejection. And he started laughing because he said he's been on hundreds of podcasts. He said across the board, every single podcaster has had a fear of rejection,
Wow.
and they face their fear by putting themselves out there. Isn't that interesting?
I love that so much. That makes so much sense to me.
It does. And again, I'm very proud of myself for
I
doing that.
am too. So
Thank you, Asha. I think I do. I'm saying that because I really do hope that people say to themselves how proud they are. Even if getting out of bed is a major accomplishment like that, like you're climbing Mount Everest. Oh my gosh, that's a huge accomplishment. I wanted to talk a little bit about your oracle cards and the one that I pulled today for this conversation. And I pulled Full Moon Spirit. And I thought, are you kidding me? It's all about illuminating, about, and you give you always give a healing affirmation. This one says, it is safe to take up space. I stand audaciously and own my luminosity. Wow, that just moved me deeply. And that's what these cards do. I really encourage people to pick up these cards, but it's also for the audience
mm,
that you can hold space and that you do own your own luminosity. And please, please honor that. So thank you for that card.
I love that card. Even when somebody shows the card, I can feel I'm
You
just like,
can
oh,
feel, can't you? And so I started to get tears in my eyes again. You can feel this. So there are things out there, that there are books and there are oracle decks and objects of art that carry magic with them and energy with them. I have my whole desk is covered in feathers that have been gifted to me by my animal friends and rocks and things, and they all carry energy, which brings me to something super important that I want to talk to you about. You write in your book, You Are the Medicine, you write a letter to the white woman, which I think is really important to share. And I also feel it's important to share these sacred ceremonies that we do. We all sage and we all do this. And I've always been a believer that you have to honor what you're doing. And can you share for the rest of us how you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, I wrote that letter in 2019, so it's interesting to talk about it now because it's been quite a few years since I wrote that. But I wrote that letter because of the visceral reaction that I was having at the time to cultural appropriation that was happening. I'd say more. Like, I think things have actually gotten quite a bit better. I just speak as one Indigenous voice, but I do see that people are more conscious than they used to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially on social media, where there used to be just a lot more flying around of sage and just using it to propel your business forward and taking an extract. It felt very extractive. So that's the issue, really, is extracting these ceremonies and these rituals and these connection to medicine that were first illegal for us to practice because we had to go underground
Mm-hmm.
because the missionaries came in and said, and the government said it's illegal to practice your medicine. Then we see these white women practicing our medicine that were illegal for us to practice. So we have all these layers to get through and heal through before we even feel worthy enough to bring them forward. That's probably the hardest thing. And then it's people who at the time didn't really even understand that Indigenous people are still here. So I still have, I've heard that sometimes, especially traveling to the States. I've had people say, I didn't even know Indigenous people still existed and things like that, which is just so much, there's just so much ignorance still. So not
Mm-hmm.
honoring the land that you're on of the original people and taking from. We have a very different viewpoint, I think, where we don't own land. We have a relationship to land. We don't have power over creation. It's a relationship and it's a reciprocal relationship. We receive so much from the earth. How can we give back and how can we not focus always on taking and how much we can get? Because I think that's a very colonial viewpoint that is ingrained. So during that time when I wrote that letter, I was feeling that extraction energy and people taking and it would make me shake. I would have this shaking and I would feel the extraction from my body. So
Yeah.
that's why I eventually wrote that letter. And at the time, I didn't have much of a platform. So it wasn't even like, I thought, oh, who's going to read this?
Yeah.
When it went viral. It was huge at the time for that to go viral because people were really angry. They did not want to look at this. They did not. It was before 2020 happened. So none of these conversations were really happening. And the amount of anger for years after, I'll still get the odd email where people are angry or DM where they're just like, I bought your book and I'm returning it. I want my money back. Or,
Wow.
they just get really upset about that. And my intention was to write it from heart. My intention was to write it in a relational way so that we could come together and understand one another and then somehow make repair so that we could. I'm not going to be the one saying, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. People are going to do what they want to do. How can we do this with reverence? How can we do this honoring the people, the plant, the land, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, all of those things at the forefront? That's how I feel about that now. And I don't tend to shake anymore because I've talked about it enough. And I do think that people are starting to see it. There's a lot more acknowledgement of original people, of land that you're on, all of these things. And the history,
Mm-hmm.
the really true history of Turtle Island I'll speak to, people are actually caring about it. Whereas before they just had no clue.
Well, I think it's really important. And I live half the year in the mountains of Rancho Mirage, which is indigenous. It was the Native Americans lived there. And there is an honoring there. When you go through it, there are signs and there are, honor this land that you're walking on. And I am extremely sensitive to this. And I feel it's really important. And I also believe that if you're doing a ceremony and it's not of pure intent of the heart, I think it could cause more damage than good. Because I don't think sometimes people don't realize the energies they're working with are very powerful. And so if you're not honoring it properly, I think you could be creating more damage in your life if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I definitely think that's very true, especially with regards to very traditional Indigenous ceremonies like Sweat Lodge or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like, I think that that's a very, those things need to be taken very seriously and they need to be led by people who are trained in those things. And that's why they're closed practices too, because I understand that. I have a very different perspective, I think, than maybe some Indigenous people because they want to keep all of everything I've shared. There's people who are angry that I'm sharing them because they feel like
Hmm.
they should be sharing them how I'm sharing them. But I do feel like they are like an invitation to find your own medicine, to find your own ancestors,
Hmm.
to feel your own spirit inside of you. So that's my intention, but people won't always see that.
Well, that's always going to happen, right? Even
It's
your
true.
own people, your own, they're going to find something wrong, others are going to find something wrong. But I do think it's an invitation to find your own medicine because you are the medicine and to find your own that works for you and honor it. I mean, people know me that I talk to my trees, I hug my trees, I talk to all my crows and squirrels every morning. I talk to them, I feed them, I talk to them. Um, and they're my family. And oh my God, I'm so grateful that I have them in my life because they're my healers, Asha. When I was having kind of a tough time the other day, I went out to my tree, my big oak tree. Oh my God, I'll start crying. And I wrapped my arms around it and I said, I need your wisdom here. And it's incredible how it came through big time. It hugged me back. Okay, this is not normal for me. So this is you. This is your energy. You're bringing out in me um, some wounds that really need to come out. I can feel it, and it's happening in live time right now. So when people watch this, they're going to see because I have these buried, things that I haven't been able to release. And I'm doing that here with you right now. So I thank you for that. Wow. Um, can, so as I try to continue here, can you? I have a quote from you that I thought that really spoke to what you do, and it's as I remembered who I was, I began to feel my spirit soar. Constantly connecting to my truth and honoring myself, my body began to heal. And I ultimately knew that the divine healing that shows up for me is possible for everyone. And I do feel that's important. And even though you're going through pain and you are, I don't think we're ever fully healed. Um, you have a different perspective on it.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how we are the medicine?
I think that phrase came from walking or being a homeopath because I would see these remedies unlock something in somebody. It was like their vital force got remembered. They'd get back online, clearing some of that trauma. And I saw so many things heal. I've seen them heal in my own self too. I've seen excruciating arthritis or things that I just never thought would actually shift. So that was where that really came from, is knowing that, and also giving my power away to doctors and
Mm,
healers and everybody, which we all do to a certain extent when we're desperate. We want an answer. We want somebody to tell us what to do to make it better, to make the pain go away. And I did that for so long, and I realized that wasn't really the way that I was going to heal. So I've seen miraculous healing in my own self, and I've seen it in lots of my patients in those ways where people, got off their anxiety medication or got off their arthritis
mm,
medication, just did all these beautiful things from homeopathy and from energy. So the premise behind homeopathy is that you have this vital force that when appropriately kind of catalyzed, it's going to come back into balance. And that is really the truth. I've seen that happen over and over again. And I think now, after being in pain for 2 years, I also realize there's another layer to it. Like, I also realize how much shame I also carried, though, I
mm,
think, around blaming myself for creating certain things in my body, or how the wellness world has told me it's my fault. And so that's really what I've been unwinding from for the last couple of years, is the
mm.
shame, the blame, and the internalized oppression too, to say that, just not naming that there are systems of oppression at work constantly that are impacting our bodies that we don't always see. And that's an important thing to presence as well, because it's there.
The
Yeah.
wellness community, it's huge. And on Instagram, it is it just takes over. And this is the cure. This is a cure for that. This is a cure. And it's overwhelming and it makes my head explode because I am into very much into wellness. I'm into working out. I do take my supplements. But it's been trial and error. And it's really challenging because there's so much thrown at you. It's really interesting, Asha. I interviewed my son. He had Crohn's disease and was very, very ill. And he was on the horrible drugs. And the doctor said, you're never going to be off these drugs. Very similar to what you heard. You're never going to be off these drugs. You're going to live with this for the rest of your life. And after about 2 years, he just said, I'm not living like he was young. He was 20, maybe 25, 26. I can't remember. He's 30. No, he was older than that because he's 37 now. So it was probably about 7 years ago. And he just says, I'm not living like this. And he got into wellness. And he realized that high polyphenol organic olive oil, which is ancient, from ancient times, helped him. And now he has an olive oil company.
I love that.
That is, very, very monitored. And he's not on drugs and he does not have inflammation anymore.
Amazing.
But a lot of that has to do with the belief that you are the healer. And so I do admire him for doing that because I think it's really hard when the medical community is telling you this, no, you're never going to get over this. That's an impossible ask of us to say, well, yes, I am.
Yeah, there definitely isn't very much hope in that message. So yeah, that can be really hard.
No. And how do we find hope? Because so many of us, we don't have hope.
Mm.
And how do we get up in the morning and be hopeful? Like, how are you hopeful?
I, that's a really good question because I've had to practice that so much more than ever. Before, I think my name means hope. My given name means hope. And I think I found
Oh,
it really easy. It was an effortless part of me. But in the last while, it's been hard to find hope. So I'll find hope in the little moments like the sunrise, the birds chirping. Like I have to get
mhm.
very, very intentional about the small things. And something that shifted my perspective was this documentary. I don't know if you've heard of Andrea Gibson, but they were this amazing.
Oh,
Yes, you love Andrea Gibson. Yes.
I
So
think
I love.
everybody loves Andrea
Oh,
Gibson.
so I love that. I just love that poem, Tincture, like about the soul missing the body. And that was a huge shift for me because I watched that documentary when I was in my biggest fears place and had such huge fears of dying. And I watched that. And then when they read that, I thought, oh my goodness, this is so true. So I do try to see what my soul would miss if I didn't have this pain in my body, what my
Mm-hmm.
soul would miss not being here in this body. It's a very different perspective. That has given me a shift on hope that I really needed. And I try to practice that every day. But it's a practice.
It's all a practice. And I feel that what you're going through is healing for the rest of us too, because you're going to relate to so many people and you can talk about your experiences and it gives all of us hope. I mean, look at you. And I had a guest on, her name is Dana Crochere. She's become a dear, dear, dear friend. And the documentary Love Heals is about her journey. They just finished one. She and her partner Chrisanna finished one called Rescued Hearts about the healing power of horses. These are two hugely beautiful films, and Dana was in excruciating pain. Like she couldn't move pain in her back. She couldn't move, and she went to this retreat in Sedona, Love Heals, and it they did all kinds of healings that were not specific to her pain, but to what she was carrying. And she's a completely different person. She still has some pain. She still has some, but you her life has shifted dramatically. So we carry so much within us that you don't see. That's not, yes, I have back pain, but I'm carrying it from my ancestors or from something else. And I think it's really important to know and important to heal. So your work can
I
do
think,
that.
yeah, I think I also carry hope that there's an answer, or I'm just gonna keep going, right? Like I have all this pain right now, and I've been going to all these people to just keep digging deeper. So you have to have a certain amount of hope to believe that something is going to shift it. Because I've seen it in the past. I think having experience too, to see that things have shifted in the past gives us hope for the future too, that my body has done this before. My body does know how to do this. Um, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, like doing interviews maybe 4 years ago for my first book, and then going through this, because it's a very different stage. So I get to look and revisit those things that I wrote about and spoke about and really live it. Like this period has been living out the words that I've written and living out
Yeah.
the medicine. And that's what, life does to us. It's like, can you live this? You've said this, and how are you going to embody it now?
It's walk the talk,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You have amazing healing qualities, and that with pain or no pain, you are a walking healer because of what you've done in my space right here. It's shifted me. It's changed me. And I want I hope that you understand that, and I hope that you realize even that you're carrying a lot of discomfort. The comfort that you're giving to others is priceless. So I think it's really, really important that you hear that and that you understand that. In this book, You Are the Medicine, you talk about, and I took so many notes when I listened to it because your voice is healing. I like listening to your voice. It's really beautiful. And you talk about it's the 13 moons of Indigenous wisdom. And I found them so incredible. And the bear one really, I use the bear one because you talk about zipping. So there's zipping. When you, I'm not sure how you're supposed to use it, but I know when I'm feeling off, I put a bear coat around me and I zip it up over my head, and I feel strong and I feel brave. And I love those teachings in there. Do you use those teachings for yourself also?
I do. And, I wasn't in front of as many audiences back then when I wrote that book. So now I really have to use them because I'm just in front of a lot more people, and I do soak up a lot of energy. So I
Yes.
need to do a lot of protection work, and I need to do a lot of energy balancing, clearing, healing. I have to make sure that I do take those salt baths after, no matter what, if I've traveled a lot over the last 2 years, so I've always have salt in my suitcase. So whether there's not a bathtub, it's a salt shower I have to take. But I need to make sure that I do a lot of clearing, because there's lots of just energy swirling around, and you never know what's in the room. So I've
Oh,
done.
it's so true because I feel I pick up on so many energies. I took an Epsom salt bath last night because I felt like I really needed it. Do you take salt? Do you just use salt or do you use Epsom salt?
I use Epsom salt and usually magnesium flakes too.
Yes, that's what I do.
So yeah, it depends on what I've got. Some baking soda. Yeah, it just depends. But I take baths a lot. I find that they rejuvenate me. Water is so healing, as we know. And I think that those minerals, I definitely need that. So I take a salt bath every day. That's something that is like a non-negotiable for me.
Oh, I think it's beautiful. I feel that too when I'm just in water. And that's where my creativity just comes forward. I mean, ideas come forward. And this was really blew my mind a few months ago. I was taking a bath and light language started coming out of my mouth. And I have never spoken that. And I've never even thought of speaking it. But now it's a part of my existence. And that came through taking that bath. It's been really healing. It's been really, really helpful. What about belonging? So many of us feel like we don't belong. I felt that all my life. I felt like I was the outsider, that I remember at my son's football games and things. I rode a motorcycle, so I'd ride my motorcycle up and have my leathers on. And I wasn't like the typical mom in the area. And I would get kind of weird looks and things and kind of smirks. And I felt, I feel like I'm at a place I don't belong. What do you say about that? Because I'm sure a lot of people you see feel like they don't belong.
Yeah, I think that's such a human experience in so many ways. And for me, I think a lot of the people that I work with too are in the Indigenous community, and because of the colonial mentality was trying to erase, right? Erase indigeneity out of the person. So it's always, am I indigenous enough? That's always no
Oh,
matter how much actual lineage you have, it's something that we carry as indigenous people as a really deep wound. So that's something that I speak to a lot in those ways, knowing that that really is what the colonizer wanted from us, is to erase us in so many ways and erase the indigeneity out. So we work on that together. But I think belonging, maybe that's perhaps why I love creating community, because I think people find belonging in community. And I think we've lost our connection to community. We're so
mm,
siloed and we're so individualistic. And I think it could be as simple as being part of a community, creating communities, not being so siloed, not feeling like there's nothing to relate to in another. I think that's again intentional by the systems to try to separate us somehow and divide us somehow, which has been bigger than ever. I think over the last couple of years,
yeah.
it's been really, really huge. And it's interesting because I think, I have a lot of beautiful friendships, and I've never, I felt over the last 20 years like really blessed and lucky to have so many loving people in my life. But I've had instances of belonging lately being a baseball mom, because I'm on these new baseball teams and my boys both play rep, and it's new families I have to get to know and new parents I have to get to know. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt that urge to belong. So I just thought that was really interesting, thinking, oh, I've never really felt that in a long time. And now I can see it. I can see those like old wounds coming up of,
Mm,
oh, I want to belong here somehow in this club of whatever this is. It's really, I think that's why I know it's human nature, because I think we can feel a certain sense of belonging with the people we're comfortable with, and then that
hmm.
old wound can arise again when we're in a new situation or there's new people in our lives. So, I do think it comes down to, though, that like siloing of society. And
Hmm.
I don't think traditionally we would have felt that, because we had communities that we did belong to. And we have, like, as Indigenous people, we see like land as part of our belonging too. Like that's our relationship, our first relationship. So you never feel like you don't belong, because you're always with Mother Earth, and you belong to yourself within that system of creation. So I think that if we could all kind of remember that as we stand on the earth, that we belong to ourselves, and the earth is always there to love us and hold us. That's a truth that I think we can always embody.
That's so true. I have a master's degree in cultural anthropology and folklore, and I loved ethnicity. I loved learning about people's ethnicity. It took me away from being ethnocentric. I love when people practice their traditions. And so I've always been very, very keenly aware of that. And storytelling was such a big part of growing up, in a lot of societies, a lot of tribal societies, a lot of around the world, storytelling. You'd sit around a fire, you'd tell stories. I so think we need our storytelling back. That really gives you a sense of community. You belong, you're a part of something. And even in the Jewish, traditions are storytelling. And I don't practice really, but I do relate to the cultural part and the storytelling of it all. It's really, really important. I remember in the book, and this really stood out to me. You went to an event and the person said, "This is not a safe place. This is a brave space." Do you remember that?
Mm. Yeah.
And because you often hear, okay, you're in a safe space. Because this is, for my listeners, this is a safe space. I want this to be a safe space. I also want it to be a brave space, that maybe you'll take a step forward and do something that you were afraid to do. But I love that person gave everybody that. They said, hey, you're here and you're brave. You're brave for being here. Beautiful words.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think because I think safety is so important always, especially from a
Mm-hmm.
nervous system perspective. And I think sometimes if we just stay in our safe spaces, then we're never going to grow, and we're never going to stretch, and we're never going to see another
Exactly.
person's opinion, or we're not. I think that keeps us maybe a little bit siloed too, if we just stay on these like safe places and don't interact with people who have differing opinions. The practice of nuance and holding that gray space is always something I value in people when you can hold both and see like a bigger perspective. And I think that we've lost that over the last 5 years or 6 years because everybody wants to be right and their way to be
Mm.
right. And that sometimes it's heartbreaking because I think, yeah, the ability to hold, that's part of my name, Healing Rainbow Woman. It's this rainbow of like that nuance that I think that sometimes we can miss. And then we can miss the person, or we can miss the heart, or we can miss the spirit of that person because we're just, I don't know, maybe rigid in our ideas.
Yeah, I that's just such an important point. I feel that we do need to listen to others, even if they have different opinions about things. It's so beautiful when you can have a conversation with somebody and not jump on them. That the way the brain works, we're so fearful. The brain is so fearful of the unknown. And so when something you're not used to comes in, the brain's going, "Oh wait, no, 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 we don't want that. We need to get back to comfort, our comfort. That's where we're going to be safest." But the magic happens in the unknown. And that's something that I've had to learn because I was so fearful. Yet I did things that a fearful person would never do, like jump out of an airplane and ride a motorcycle and those kinds of things.
I love that.
Asha, is there anything else that you'd like to share? I can't believe we're coming to the close here. I do have questions to ask you, but is there something else that you feel you'd like to share?
Well, you know what? I have my elders deck here, so maybe I was going to choose a card for the listeners to see what animal spirit comes forward because you chose one
Yes.
for the from the Sacred Medicine Oracle. So I'm just going to ask, what does spirit need us to know today, and see what animal comes forward. Let's see. Oh my goodness, we got the skunk.
Oh,
So the skunk energy, skunk medicine is about boundaries. This one in particular says set boundaries. It's a very strong message, and we know skunk doesn't fool around. When we see a skunk, we know what they're all about. They don't have to make themselves bigger. They're there in their boundaries. So if you're feeling like your body's speaking to you about setting boundaries and finding that sacred no, this is the time. It's a boundary time right now.
and discernment. I feel like it also speaks to discernment. If you're in a situation that doesn't feel comfortable, well, maybe that's not the spacious. I mean, if it feels energetically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I have a few questions. And when fear starts creeping in, what is your go to strategy to help release it?
I think singing. I love to sing. I love to sing in the shower, singing in the car. Those are my two favorite things to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't really keep a tune. I sing all the time, but I think singing is so healing. It's so incredibly healing. And humming can really shift you out of a really dire space. It's wonderful. What's one of the best pieces of advice you've received in life, personally or professionally?
I think you have the permission to disappoint everyone. I remember a teacher
Mm,
said that, and that really struck me. That was really profound for me because that was it's still probably a big fear. I don't love disappointing people, but at the
mhm.
time I was really trying not to do that.
Oh, I remember somebody once said, "You disappoint me. You disappointed me," and it was like a knife to my heart. It was it was awful. So I love that that teacher said that. Beautiful. What does a successful life look like to you?
Well, I think that's changed over the years. Now it would be one of ease, comfort, and rest.
Yeah.
Those things are success. If I have spaciousness to go for a walk, if I have time to read a book, if I have time to have tea with a friend, spaciousness, comfort, and ease, those are the things that feel like success to me.
Mm, it's beautiful. complete this sentence. In the past, I was, and now I am.
Mm. Ooh. In the past, I was really hard on myself, and now I am more accepting, yeah, of who
Oh,
I am.
well, that's just beautiful. And one other thing came into me. If you could whisper something to in the ear of every listener right now, words of wisdom, is there something that comes to mind? That just came into my mind.
You know what? I usually see things in images versus hearing things. So I
Yeah.
see like a deer spirit come forward, and deer
Oh,
medicine to me is just about self-compassion, softening that critic and letting that flow over you. So I think if you can imagine a deer spirit and deer medicine coming in and washing you with self-compassion today, just to bring you back closer to that love place that you talked about, right? Being proud of yourself and self-love. That's what I want to offer to people is deer medicine. It's something I carry, I think, pretty deeply within my heart.
that is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And there are many people that needed to hear that,
Oh.
including myself. Thank you. Asha, where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram at asha.frost. I'm on TikTok, and you can find me at ashafrost.com if you want to send me an email. And I am in my DMs if you ever want to send me a message.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such an honor. And thank you for opening up my tear ducts.
Oh, it's been such a blessing to be here with you,
Oh
Sandi.
my goodness. Sending you so much love. Mwah.